Football is back, which means we're setting fantasy lineups for week 1. And to help us do that, I've created 7 categories to find the best plays for your week 1 matchups. It's boom bust, it's best matchup, it's must sit, it's sleeper, the top rookie, the week winner, and the Hail Mary play of the week. We'll identify a player for each category to help you make those critical lineup decisions. Let's start with the boom bust player of week 1. This is a player with huge upside but a low floor. Think high risk, high reward, but I'm rolling the dice with the hope that he explodes. And that's going to be Kyle Pitts. I know, but I promise I'm not some deranged Kyle Pitts truther. I've actually never been a Kyle Pitts guy and kind of proud of that, actually. It's just this matchup and this opportunity are ripe for a boom week for Kyle Pitts. He should be the Falcons' number 2 target in the passing game after wide receiver 2 Darnell Mooney missed almost the whole summer with his injury. And this game could be our first fantasy points party of the 2025 season. We've got 2 loaded offenses and questionable defenses in the Dome in Atlanta. These 2 teams put on a show both times they played against each other in 2024. The Falcons won both, but the first game was a 36-30 overtime thriller. The other was another high-scoring 31-26 showdown. There's going to be a bunch of points scored in this game, both in reality and in fantasy. And looking back at those 2 games from a year ago, Kyle Pitts caught 7 of 8 targets for 88 yards in the first matchup, and then he went 4 of 5 for 91 yards and 2 touchdowns in the second. Those were literally his 2 highest scoring games of the season. Both were against Tampa Bay. I know it's a new season, a new quarterback, but Kyle Pitts has massive boom potential in week 1. This is why you drafted him right here. This is why. Get him in your lineup. This could be his best performance of the season. Others you could consider for this category would be Marvin Harrison Jr. against the Saints or Matthew Golden against the Lions. Moving on to the best matchup, plain and simple, this guy has the nuts matchup for week 1. Start him if you got him, and that's David Njoku going against the Bengals. We got the quarterback that we wanted in Cleveland, and the matchup is about as good as any for David Njoku to smash in week 1. The Bengals defense projects to be a unit that we can take advantage of once again in 2025. They were particularly bad against tight ends in 2024. And David Njoku was one of the many tight ends who took advantage of that. He played against the Bengals twice last season. The first, he caught 10 of 14 targets for 76 yards and a touchdown, which was good to finish tight end 1 overall on the week. And then in week 16, David Njoku carved up the Bengals again for 8 catches, 66 yards, and a tight end 5 finish. Now, Joe Flacco will be starting at quarterback for the Browns to begin the season, which is honestly, that's best case scenario for all of us who drafted David Njoku this summer. And Flacco and David Njoku, they thrived together 2 years ago when Joe Flacco came in late and led the Browns to the playoffs in 2023. In his 6 starts, Joe Flacco averaged 41.7 pass attempts per game, while David Njoku averaged 17.5 fantasy points per game over the last 5, while scoring no worse than the tight end 4 over that stretch. Joe Flacco is going to sling it. The Bengals defense still stinks, and the Browns are going to be in comeback mode from the get-go. Fire up David Njoku in week 1 with confidence. I'm starting him over TJ Hawkinson, Sam Laporta, Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, Evan Ingram, and others as my tight end 4 for week 1. Others that you could consider for this category are Chuba Hubbard against the Jaguars, Mike Evans against the Falcons, Tetairoa McMillan against the Jaguars, and then Kyle Pitts, who we already talked about, against the Buccaneers, and Drake London in that same game. Let's move on to the must-sit player of the week. This is the player with a terrible matchup and needs to be on your bench if you have other options. And for me, for week one, that is going to be DeAndre Swift going against the Vikings. DeAndre Swift is a tough start in week one. I don't know if I can do it. I drafted him in a few teams. I don't know if I can start him in week one. We're looking at a brand new Bears offense under head coach and play caller Ben Johnson, an offense that frankly struggled for much of training camp and didn't look good in the last preseason game either. So I expect it might be a slow start for this team to begin the 2025 season. We couple that with some uncertainty about DeAndre Swift's role. Is he the bell cow? How much will Roschon Johnson play? Kyle Monangai? Who knows? I don't know. We look at this matchup. The Vikings were sixth in fewest running back rushing yards allowed in 2024, and they gave up the eighth fewest fantasy points per game to the position. In fact, the Vikings and Bears played against each other twice last season, week 12 and week 15. DeAndre Swift scored fewer than 10 fantasy points in both of those games when these two teams played against each other in 2024. Like I said, I think this Bears offense is going to naturally get off to a slow start no matter the opponent. But now they're matched up with a defense that's as tough as the Vikings. They allowed the fourth fewest points last year. I just can't trust DeAndre Swift in my lineup for this one. I would rather start Breece Hall, David Montgomery, Austin Eckler, Trevion Henderson, Omarion Hampton, Aaron Jones, Isaiah Pacheco, Tony Pollard. The list goes on. Others you could consider for this category that you probably should be sitting in week one would be Tua Tagovailoa on the road against the Colts, Nick Chubb going against the Rams, and Jonnu Smith against the Jets. Now, my sleeper for week one, this is the player flying under the radar. Not many people are starting him, but the stars are aligned for him to be a good play this week. And for me, that's going to be Josh Palmer. Josh Palmer is being so underappreciated. The Bills just gave him $18 million guaranteed. And he's part of a wide receiver core that is pretty much wide open for someone to step up and be the guy. Khalil Shakir has missed most of August with an ankle sprain. His status for week one is unknown at the time of this recording. And even if he does play, he's not going to be a full go. That means Josh Palmer is likely going to lead the team in targets in week one. And it's probably not going to be Keon Coleman. It's probably not going to be Dalton Kincaid. So why not Josh Palmer? And there should be a lot of passes thrown in this game and a lot of points scored. I know the Bills didn't have a ton of success passing against the Ravens when they played each other last season, but the Ravens allowed the fourth most yards to wide receivers and fifth most fantasy points per game to the wide receiver position in 2024. I think we could get a 7 for 75 type of game from Josh Palmer. Maybe he even gets in the end zone. But either way, should be a nice PPR play from a guy who's rostered in just 15% of Yahoo leagues. And other sleepers you can consider for week one are Jerome Ford against the Bengals, Christian Kirk against the Rams, Cedric Tillman against the Bengals, Brenton Strange against the Panthers, Kyle Pitts, who we already talked about, Bryce Young against the Jaguars, and Michael Penix going against the Buccaneers. And if you want more sleepers, I do a sleeper show live right here on the Yards Per Fantasy YouTube channel every Saturday night with my co-host Sam. We give you 6 sleepers who you can start, plus a bold prediction to cap off the show. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss it. Moving on to the rookie play of week one. This is a rookie I expect to outperform expectations in the first week of the season. That's going to be Tetairoa McMillan. We're going right back to that Panthers wide receiving core. I told you I believe in this Panthers offense. I believe in Bryce Young. I think they're going to take a major step forward this season. And Tetairoa McMillan is going to be a big reason why. I've talked about him all offseason. He was one of my most drafted players over the summer. He's going to be the immediate alpha in the Panthers offense with little target competition and an ascending Bryce Young, who may be on the verge of that breakout season. He's got prototypical X receiver size and physicality, plus some juice to make some plays after the catch as well. He's going to be a go-to target for Bryce Young in every situation, especially in the end zone, in the red zone area, where his 6'4", 219-pound frame will be nearly impossible to contain. This matchup against the Jaguars, very friendly for Tetairoa McMillan to come in and get off to a good start to his career. The Jaguars, 5th easiest matchup for wide receivers last season. Could be a sneaky shootout. I know it's hard to trust a rookie wide receiver in week 1, but I believe we are not going to have to wait that long for Tetairoa McMillan to break out. So I'm starting him this week. I'm starting him over Marvin Harrison Jr., DJ Moore, George Pickens, Jamison Williams, and even Terry McLaurin. I am all in on Tetairoa McMillan from the get-go in 2025. Other rookies that I really like in week 1, Emeka Egbuka, Omarion Hampton, and Ashton Genty. Start them all with confidence. Now to our week winner for week 1. This is the guy who's going to absolutely smash this week and put your team on his back and lead you to a victory all by himself. And that is my guy, Chase Brown, going against the Browns. Chase Brown was my ultimate must draft player during draft season, even as his ADP rose throughout the summer. He was a complete bell cow in the second half of last season, and there's very little reason to think that that won't be continuing in 2025. I mean, he was awesome in that role. From weeks 9 through 17, Chase Brown averaged an 86.2% snap share. He had 23.7 touches per game. He averaged 116.3 total yards per game, and he was the RB4 in fantasy points per game. He was completely dominant. He showed off his big play ability with 10 breakaway runs. He was elusive with a top 10 rank in evaded tackles, and he was an active weapon in the receiving game as well, averaging nearly 5 receptions per game over his final 8 games. Now he's teed up to be a significant part of the Bengals offense once again. He'll maintain a 70+% opportunity share and one of the NFL's best offenses. He'll be a major contributor in the passing game. He should benefit from the Bengals getting to the red zone time and time again. I mean, the Bengals are the dream environment for a fantasy running back with an all-purpose skill set like Chase Brown. They have an elite quarterback. They score a ton of points, and they have a bad defense, which only forces them to have to score more points. This is a guy who averaged more than 20 PPR points per game in the second half last year. He's going to pick right up where he left off against a bad Browns team. A game the Bengals should lead early, score a lot of points, and win big. That means Chase Brown, the explosive bell cow running back, has a great chance to be the highest scoring player at his position in week 1 and get your team off to a 1-0 start to this fantasy football season. Others you could consider week winners this week: James Conner going against the Saints. That Saints defense, that Saints team is dreadful. They're going to lean on James Conner to ground and pound and win that game. He could score a bunch of touchdowns, score a bunch of fantasy points for you in week 1. And Kenneth Walker is set to explode this season. He's healthy right now. So while he's healthy, take advantage. I think he could go boom in week 1 against the Niners. Let's cap it off with the Hail Mary play for week 1. This is a player who is rostered in less than 5% of Yahoo leagues, but can be started if you need a desperation play. And for me this week, that's going to be Ray McCloud of the Falcons going against the Buccaneers. We kind of already talked about this game earlier with Kyle Pitts, but with the Darnell Mooney injury, Ray McCloud is set to take on a somewhat significant role in the Falcons offense of week 1. He'll work as the number 3 option for quarterback Michael Penix behind Drake London and Kyle Pitts. And Ray McCloud had his moments last year in a struggling Falcons passing attack with Kirk Cousins at quarterback. McCloud finished with a very respectable 62 catches, 686 receiving yards. He had 4 weeks where he finished as a top 35 wide receiver for fantasy football. That included a 12.6 fantasy point performance against this Buccaneers team in week 5. He was targeted 9 times in that game, catching 6 for 66 yards. And now he gets the Buccaneers again to kick off the 2025 season. Plus a quarterback upgrade from Kirk Cousins to Michael Penix, who looked good in his 3 starts at the end of last season. Penix targeted Ray McCloud 7 times in Week 18 for what it's worth, leading to a 10.6 fantasy point performance. This Buccaneers-Falcons game could be our first fantasy points party of the year. You've got 2 loaded offenses, questionable defenses in this dome environment. These 2 teams averaged 61.5 combined points in their 2 matchups last season. And the Buccaneers gave up the 10th most fantasy points to the wide receiver position last year. And you know their focus is going to be on stopping Drake London and Bijan Robinson, which should open up some easy looks for the secondary options like Ray McCloud. There's going to be a bunch of points scored in this game, so we want guys from this game in our lineup. So if you're looking for a desperation flex play in a deeper league, this is one of the games you should be looking at. My recommendation in that scenario is roll the dice with Ray McCloud and see what happens. Other Hail Mary plays you could look at for week 1 are Dante Thornton against the Patriots, Woody Marks against the Rams, Theo Johnson against the Commanders, and Diami Brown against the Panthers. But that's it. Those are our 7 categories. We mentioned almost 30 players. I hope something from this video will help you get that W in week 1. But don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel. I'll be putting out content like this all season long. And if you want more from me, you can find my rankings, articles, tools, resources, and so much more at yardsperfantasy.com.